The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Okay.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. You are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland, in the northern part of what I consider to be the greatest state in the Union. And what I do is simply I talk to the most interesting people on the face of the planet, day in and day out. Today's no exception. I have a native of Alameda who is a longtime family friend of my lover and her roommate, her sister. His name is Brian McDonald. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. And
good. I hope to give you a better introduction, but it's the end of my work day, and you know how I get. I get so tired and what have you. I hope I paid you justice.
No worries. Your remark about most interesting people or something, I think I got 3 cats and 2 dogs who are perhaps the only critters on the planet who would agree with you that I belong in that company, but other than
you know, it's just an opinion. How about that? And I have strong opinions, and I've known you for a while, and you are an interesting person. You have a diverse background. Let's start with early on. I think you wanted to be an attorney, and you became one. Tell me about that.
Well, yeah. I can't say I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to be a politician. I used to say when I was young that my 3 ambitions were to manage a successful presidential campaign, win a Pulitzer Prize, and host Saturday Night Live. And, of course, I never orders of magnitude of any of the 3, but I did do a little journalism, a little politics, and never really appeared on TV.
Tell me about the politics behind it. What was your role in that? And
I enjoyed campaigns. I enjoyed the strategy. So I went to law school because I thought it would help there. And then I was I was a staffer for the state legislature for a while. When Elihu Harris was a member of the Assembly and chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
I remember well, yeah.
I worked for him. And then I had gone to law school just thinking it might help with the politics stuff. But when Elihu restructured his office and I was looking for something to do, I practiced law for I guess about 2.5 years here in Alameda. Didn't enjoy it much, got stressed out, and moved on.
Well, you know, that's what I admire about you and others who have decided to, if it isn't working, segue, go to something else. Don't be stuck in something for the rest of your life. When I was a kid, one of my friends, his name was Joel Michalowski. I remember that. I remember his story of going to law school, getting at his dad put him through law school, and he hated it, and he went to work in the family business after that. And I always thought better to do if you make a mistake or if your situation changes, better to segue into something else than to be miserable in what you were doing. Well, with that in mind, it couldn't have been all misery. What was fun about being an attorney?
Well, it wasn't all misery, but, you know, I would say what I used to say after I left the law was a lot of lawyers I know absolutely love it. It's just joy to them. Others don't particularly love it, but as a job, it pays well, and they're very happy with it. And then A few hate it. But one thing, every ex-lawyer I know was happy.
Okay. Happy being an ex, in other words.
Being an ex, happy with whatever they had moved on to.
Okay. You did something that you were a merchant marine, if I'm not mistaken.
Longshore.
Longshore.
We
Okay.
load the container ships in the port of Oakland.
Okay.
And that I enjoyed the job. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are a small number of people, maybe 1% of the population, who actually love what they do for a job as a hobby. I mean, Steph Curry would love shooting hoops even if nobody ever paid him to shoot hoops. And
right.
Most of the baseball players that you've interviewed, that was fun for them as well as a career. Actors, radio personalities. I can't say I love my job in that sense. I mean, if nobody had ever paid me to load cargo ships, I wouldn't go out and do it as a hobby. But for a job, it was a great one. I was extremely lucky to have such a good career opportunity come along when it did. And, got into union office, kind of got back, got my political fix again, doing union stuff. In fact, I still do. I'm very active in the pensioner. I'm secretary treasurer of the Bay Area Pensioners, the Longshore Hall in San Francisco, the big dome building where Bill Graham got his start and a lot of cities held. For legal reasons, that's not actually owned by the union. It's owned by a separate corporation that all the union members belong to. And I'm the pensioners representative on the board of directors of that. And I'm also... So
your legalese comes in handy every day.
Yeah, legalese, more my politicalese, but yeah. We have a group that's the lobbying and political action arm of all of the Longshore locals around Northern California, and I'm a pensioners representative of that. So I stay very involved in the union. That and feral cat colonies are probably my two main ways I spend my time.
Okay. What do you miss? Is there any one thing that you miss about practicing law on a full-time basis?
Nope. And of course, that was a very long time ago, and I've always had a terrible memory. So it's basically only a
well, you have a good memory, but it's short. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it that way. Let's go to Alameda. How long have you lived in Alameda? Probably all your life. 68
years. Yep.
Wow.
All my life.
And
my dad was born and raised in Alameda.
Well, let's talk about your dad for a second. The courthouse in Alameda is named after your dad. He was a judge. How did being a judge's kid affect you when you were growing up? Were there expectations of you going into law? Was your dad a disciplinarian? How did your friends respond?
My parents were fairly strict, fairly conservative, not hugely noticeably so, but probably more than most. There were, maybe not growing up, but a little later when I was looking for what to do. My dad, being a lawyer had been a great life for him, and so he assumed it would be a great life for most folks. So, his advice to me always tended that direction.
Mm-hmm.
That made a difference.
What was your mom like growing up? How did she fit into your memories?
She was a homemaker. She was stricter. Yeah, more of a disciplinarian. Of course, I was so shy and nerdy that, I went along with everything. I hardly ever left. I hardly had any friends. I just hung out, loved to read. Growing up, I was quite pathologically shy.
Okay. What was the one thing that got you by that? How did you become, because I didn't ever think of you as being shy, either in person or the few times that we've met. What was the breakthrough?
I don't know that there was a breakthrough. You just get, I was also quite immature, and eventually you kind of automatically outgrow that in the sense that, when you're 20, if you're immature, then you act 15 or something. But when you're 68, how can anybody tell if you're immature if you're acting 48? But
that's a very good point.
I just got used to people and, of course, doing things like politics and everything. I was often talking to people and, I was on, even if I wasn't like personally connecting or anything.
Okay. All these years living in Alameda, what is the biggest change in the city? And does it run along the lines of how it is everywhere? The world is changing. But what changes are you happy with in Alameda? And what changes are you almost repulsed by?
Well, repulsed would probably be too strong a term, but certainly, I loved the small town atmosphere that we had when I was growing up.
Okay.
One of our local tenants' rights activists that I deal with, joked that I was the only person she had ever met who actually described myself as a NIMBY because, I very much want the Bay Area to solve its affordable housing problems and stuff, but I want the Bay Area to solve all these problems without messing with my little island. And I get mad at the fact that they have messed with my little island. So in that sense, I am a true definitional NIMBY. I want them to do all the right things, just not on my block or my town.
All right. What are some of the things that they're doing that you like, and what are some of the things that they're doing that you don't like?
Well, the don't like is summed up in just the pure rate of growth. And to go with your other question, yeah, that's something that happens almost everywhere, at least, every suburban area, most urban areas. You've got traffic and crowdedness and I've been here too long to appreciate it. Maybe if I were brand new to Alameda, and I would love Alameda the way it is, now my memories are of a small town, much more relaxed, able to drive to the bridges during rush hour.
Which isn't possible nowadays, for instance.
Yeah, and I look forward with a certain amount of trepidation when I see all the construction that's going to make it more so. On the other hand, I like things like I hope that after the plague ends, we still have more of the outdoor dining options. I like the energy and walkability and style of going down Park Street nowadays. I live a block off Park Street, so easy to walk there. And I like the outdoor dining and everything. That's probably the biggest positive change I've looked at.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to address something in Alameda that's been on my mind for a long time, and that's the relationship that the public has with the police. And as illustrated by a recent example of two recent examples of policemen showing their inability to deal with the situation. I don't know if it's systemic all over the country. Police reform is drastically needed. Could you elaborate on that and how it affects Alameda?
Yeah, with all due respect for cops I've known over the years, I agree with you. Reform is needed. Alameda is simply a typical example. It's unfortunate that we're on the national news these days as one of the incidents that has received coverage. And, I think it's the same in most places. I don't know that there are easy answers. When people are having mental health crises or even just behavioral issues, how do you ensure that whoever responds, on the one hand, is able to avoid these tragic situations and treat people with respect and solve the problem rather than let it escalate? Yet on the other hand, people who are having those kinds of issues or crises, whether it involves drugs or whether it's mental illness or just behavioral, a non-trivial percentage of the people who interact with the police are going to react or behave in ways that require the cops to be cops. And so I don't know that there's an easy answer. If you send social workers out to all the calls that now go to cops, you could wind up with some dead social workers because they don't have the abilities to handle situations. On the other hand, if you don't move in that direction, you run the risk of more incidents like, Mr. Gonzalez's tragic death.
Oh, that was terrible. And it isn't the first time that we've had tragedies like that in Alameda. What comes to mind for me is the horrific way of police response. This is maybe 10 years ago now. There was a mentally, how do you say it, challenged. He was having a crisis, and he was a human being, and they treated him as if they wouldn't come out and rescue him. He was in cold, waist-deep water, and the police or the fire people and the police decided that they weren't going to go out, and because it was in some regulations that if they didn't have a boat, they couldn't go out to rescue people, this, that, and the other thing. Whatever it was poppycock. The gentleman ended up passing away, and there was to have been some reform along those lines that we're talking about now, way back then. So what stopped it from being a better place to live so this instance wouldn't have occurred?
Well, I'm not sure there's a relevance there because, not only was it a different agency, but it was a very different kind of lack of resources and lack of training. In other words, the problem with the Raymond Zach instance was specifically with both regulations, training, and equipment related to water rescue. So whether or not they solve that problem, I don't know, because we haven't had another similar enough situation. You can say whether they did what they needed to do to make sure it never happens again. I'm not sure that there's a parallel, whereas the Mario Gonzalez situation, of course, parallels all too many all over the country that have been in the news lately. And
well,
again,
the parallel to me is that it's a basic disrespect or dehumanizing people, and it doesn't matter what agency. The symptoms were remarkably alike. I was embarrassed for the city back then, and I've only been living here not 68 years, only 30 years. So I can't say I took it as personally as I'm starting to take it. It's been another 10 years, and this is going to be my home for the rest of my life. So I was really affected by this one. This hurt.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Brian, what actors, put your city planner hat on. What's in the future for Alameda, and what would you do to improve that future if you were the man?
Well, as you might guess from what I said earlier, if I had the power, I would greatly reduce the amount of new development and new density. Now, realistically, even if I were in charge of the city, nobody has that power because there are various federal and state mandates for affordable housing. And I can understand why they exist. I mean, you don't want people to be forced into homelessness by simple lack of available housing stock. Now,
or any more than they already are. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
If we can't do anything about reducing it, at least not have it get increase.
Absolutely.
Are you happy with the base? The old base is now called Alameda Point. The land was basically given by the Navy, turned over to the city by the Navy. Are you happy with the way that transition has gone?
Within the limits of what's possible, I guess probably yes. Again, my bias is don't build any more housing in Alameda.
Okay.
So looking at the sheer size of those buildings, it's hard to be happy, but looking at the fact that it wasn't optional, I accept it. And we have some couple of great distilleries and a brewery and some fine wineries out there. I got to say, those are all things that we did.
And some affordable housing is mixed in.
We have affordable housing out there, and yeah, I definitely am in favor of mandates that require that if you do overdevelop, at least make as much of it as possible affordable.
Okay. Generally, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of Alameda?
So I'm optimistic in spite of, the things I mentioned. Alameda is a great town, got great people, should continue to be a great town with great people.
Good.
It's a little hard because you and I are among the great people, and, we aren't going to be around that much longer, but there are 30-year-olds that are, as capable of making life better as we are, and hopefully in 30 years when they are us, they'll be doing that.
What's the one bit of advice you give a 30-year-old?
Wow. You mean regarding Alameda or regarding?
Just take that question any way you can, any way you want. You mentioned you're 68. You're a youngin as far as I'm concerned compared to me, but we're in the same basic age group. What would you? My kid just turned 30. What would you tell a group of children, a group of young adults to watch out for?
Well, first of all, I'd tell them to take good care of Tally and Lois when Ralph and I are gone.
Somebody better.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
As far as the city, we've got good progressive leadership that I may disagree with them on a lot of development issues, but I agree with their directions on most other things. I also, a lot of our current leadership, I trust them to be able to navigate the other main problem that you and I were discussing, the whole police reform and trying to build back better, some Delaware philosopher used to say.
Okay. You're a terrific interview. I can't imagine you being shy or ever having been shy.
Well, thank you.
I hope you'll come back.
Anytime.
Beautiful. And please know that I enjoy this. And I equate...
Once I open up, we got to get together in real life.
Absolutely. A porch party at 908 Lincoln is a lot of fun. I hope you'll join us for one of those. Thank you again. The guests. That was fun for you?
Absolutely.
You say? That made my day. Just saying that, because I have a philosophy: if it ain't fun, it shouldn't be getting done. I mean, so
I only have, like you, I'm a couple of years behind you, but like you, I'm reaching the point where I have to adopt that philosophy because who knows how much more time we got left.
We got a lot of time. If it's well spent, it's a lot of time.
That makes sense.
So please know that you're welcome here at any time, any point. If you want to come out for anything or have anything to say, this microphone is yours.
Rock on.
All right, my friend. Brian McDonald is my guest. I'm Ralph Tycho, the weak link of it all. Please come back. And if you're listening out there, we both had a good day because Brian McDonald is special, and it was my privilege to have him on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Adios, everybody. Happy trails. Thank you again, Brian.
Thank you, Ralph.
All right. Be well.
See you soon.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.